Good morning, Dan and Amy. You know, I'm so glad that former investigative reporter for CBS, Cheryl Atkinson, got out of the D.C. press corps so she can ask all
the real questions.
Yeah, all the right questions. She should be a member of Congress. She actually asks all the proper oversight questions. She does so again as it pertains to the FBI in an op-ed in The Hill. She writes, does Ms. Atkinson, what happens when federal agencies accused of possible wrongdoing also control the alleged evidence against them? What happens when they're the ones in charge of who inside their agencies or connected to them ultimately gets investigated and possibly charged? Those questions are moving to the forefront as facts play out in the investigations into our intelligence agencies' surveillance activities, and in particular, the FBI's increasing public pressure on House Republicans and, as Kim Strassel argues in the Wall Street Journal, ultimately President Trump, to not allow that memo that Devin Nunes and his team crafted over the last several months, that 4-page memo that's circulating, that's supposed to be made public as early as next week, about abuses at Jim Comey's FBI, reports that the specific individuals, among the specific individuals named for abusing the surveillance programs, Comey, Rosenstein, Deputy Attorney General, Andy McCabe, Deputy Director, FBI, and so Stephen Boyd, the Assistant Attorney General, sent a letter this week trying to put a chill on public release. But those questions that Cheryl Atkinson poses, essentially who watches the watchman, who investigates the investigators, seem to be increasingly relevant ones as far as I can tell. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Ron Hosko. He's a former FBI Assistant Director, now the President for the Law Enforcement Legal Defense Fund. Ron, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's good to be with you again.
What about the Boyd letter and the reaction it's getting from journalists like Atkinson? What is it exactly the FBI doesn't want to see come to light? Why shouldn't it come to light? And or doesn't the FBI have to do better than just kind of the blanket cover story of it would impede Mueller's investigation?
So how long do we have? Do we have most of the morning?
We have an hour, 45 minutes.
So there's a lot of pieces to unravel in this and to talk about. First, I think there is certainly internal review mechanisms for the FBI that each of us can doubt because it is the organization looking at itself. And there's plenty of reason to think that can fail for any organization, and that information can be concealed or covered up or recreated conveniently for the organization. I'm encouraged by the fact that the Department of Justice Inspector General, who in my own experience is very independent of the FBI, is very willing to criticize the FBI, has had the lead investigative role in looking at big pieces of the ongoing scandals. And that is the Clinton investigation, where politics involved in how that case was concluded. And the Inspector General does have full access to all the electronic communications of the participants, can come in and interview whoever they want under oath, and build their report. And I hope with each passing day, I desperately hope that report gets made public sooner rather than later, and that Christopher Wray, the new director, could take some action.
Well, do you think the memo is a ploy to damage public confidence in the FBI?
I absolutely believe that. And here's the difficult part for us. First, we have the blurring of the lines between legitimate reporting and commentary, punditry, that you now see on what were once traditional news channels or hear it on news channels. There's a blurring of the lines. And frankly, we all know that the battle lines in this and in Hillary have been drawn. and the skirmish lines have moved and been fought over, but we generally know who the parties are. And the parties involve Congress. That is quite clear. And now we have a situation where you have Nunes, who seems to have gone off the rails in the past and then come back on and was accused of politicizing the House Intelligence Committee, now has a 4-page memo that the Democrats are saying, let us see it so we can respond to it. They've been, it sounds like in some measure, denied reviewing it, accessing it. So they're going to create their own memo, although they've obviously seen the contents, because they're disputing the accuracy of the contents. They say this creates a false picture. So they're going to now, as of yesterday, sound like they were going to write their own memo, their counter memo, that rebuts and undermines the value, the accuracy of this Republican memo.
Well, okay,
So,
but you have so you have two political parties and two political agendas, and you also have a law enforcement agency that seems to be hyper politicized, as far as I can tell, too, and that's the FBI for starters, since we're focused there. And I'm not just talking about the Strzok and Lisa Page texts, which are extraordinary, particularly given their respective roles in senior positions at the FBI, and Strzok's role in material role in investigations of both Clinton and Trump. Even setting that alone is enough. But then, in addition to that, you have the FBI, including under Christopher Wray, that's been stonewalling Congress for documents that members of Congress thought they had assurances they were going to receive. Now the FBI is saying, we want to see a copy of the memo, and it's not fair that we're not seeing a copy of the memo. The same FBI that's been stonewalling the House Intelligence Committee with respect to the production of subpoenaed documents. So, the FBI seems to be a hyper-political organization, too.
Well, while I agree with a lot of what you said, I would disagree with this. I would disagree with the notion that the FBI is. Look, the FBI is 35,000.
I mean, at the
FBI
leadership level.
agents.
I mean, at the leadership level.
Yeah, right. I mean, we need to make sure we're defining our terms, because we're really talking about a relatively small group of people that are in the center of this discussion.
Yes.
I have been told that the FBI has bent over backwards in document production to Congress on a lot of these issues. That Congress has lots of this stuff. They could certainly ask for more, and I think there is a kind of a balancing act that sometimes has to be struck between co-equal branches of government, where yes, Congress has oversight authority over the FBI. That doesn't necessarily mean Congress gets to come in and take my entire case file on an ongoing criminal investigation.
No,
that's
but I mean,
not how that works.
No, that's true, and that's a fair point. But what about things like how they obtained the FISA warrant in the first place? Did they use the Steele dossier? What was exactly the nature of the relationship between the FBI and Christopher Steele over the course of the last 18 months? Those seem to me pertinent questions that are not related to the Russian collusion investigation directly, that more are related to how the FBI operates.
I agree with you. I agree with you totally. I think that is the core of this inquiry. How did they use that? And look, I was, I worked on the criminal side of the organization virtually my entire career. And I don't know precisely the steps to a FISA, although I've been involved in some of those in a portion of my career. But I'll tell you this, the FBI is not nothing if not a bureaucracy. And with a bureaucracy, you have layers and layers and layers. And when you're talking about using extraordinary intelligence collection techniques like a Title III, what we call a wiretap on the criminal side, or a FISA to collect your phone conversations, emails on the national security side, there are a lot of layers. And the notion of an agent, let's say even somebody who's perceived as a politicized rogue agent like Peter Strzok, the notion of that he has the ability to take, say, the dossier and type up an affidavit and run to the FISA court, knowing it is totally unvetted, unvalidated. The notion of him being able to do that, to me, is ridiculous. Now, I'm not saying he didn't do that. I'm just saying I know the layers, and that involves internal lawyers looking at it, external folks from DOJ, who the presumption would be that they colluded too or they failed to do their job. Look, if those systems all failed, then change is badly needed at the FBI. New internal controls are badly needed. I don't think it went that way, but I do think, to your point, the FBI should produce some documents and some evidence to Congress that suggests how they proceeded.
Do you think that this is a black eye for the FBI? I mean, I know you're a former FBI assistant director, but have you lost some trust in your own former agency?
Oh, I have, and that it hurts me to say that. Is it a black eye? It is a black eye. One of the things that I think the FBI is not doing well right now is they are on their heels in the PR battle for the high ground, or to at least clear the air that they're not involved in anything political. How do you do that when you have all these text messages between the lovebirds, which in my estimation and a lot of others is outrageous? Look, some of these actions have damaged the reputation that thousands of us worked to build over the years. The organization is very dependent on the trust of the public. And some of these actions call into question the organization, although I have to repeat, there are agents in Chicago and in Los Angeles and in Kansas City working around the clock to, prevent acts of terror. And
yeah, of course.
So we have to distinguish among the two. But it has tarnished our badges, and it's going to take some time to recover.
Do you think?
Go ahead.
Do you think Strzok and Page should be gone?
Yeah, what are they still there for?
Well, look, there are most agencies, good agencies, police department or otherwise, law enforcement, have internal due process mechanisms.
Right, I understand.
You have to have evidence and a hearing and due process, and so I think they're entitled to that. However, I think I wish, and I've wished this with others, that Christopher Wray would be in the Inspector General's office demanding an early read on his findings, so that Ray can act. And if that means somebody is fired, somebody's removed from the senior executive service, that he takes swift, decisive action, so that we all understand he's taking swift, decisive action to take out the cancerous part. Do it. I wish he would do that. Even if he did it prematurely in this case, based on what has already been public. The tryst, the adulterous affair, the volume of text messages, the politicizing. Look, agents everywhere. I felt passionately about my cases when I worked in Chicago. I went after kidnappers and bank robbers and white-collar thieves who would take your last penny. I was passionate that they were corrupt as hell, and I wanted to put them in jail for as long a time as possible. We want agents to feel passionately about the subjects of their cases for the most part. But when your personal politics impact, and you're talking about, the highest profile corruption case, corruption in some way, political case, you need to divorce yourselves of that silliness. And these electronic records, those impact the case. Your personal biases are discoverable, and they're going to get turned over, and they're going to impact the case. This is ridiculous on so many levels. It's unprofessional on so many levels. It's insulting to those of us who have done the job with fidelity, and those who are on the job doing it now, because it's raising doubt about their cases too.
He is Ron Hosko.
It's deeply troubling.
He is Ron Hosko, former FBI assistant director, now the president for the Law Enforcement Legal Defense Fund. Ron, thanks again for joining us. Appreciate your insights as somebody who was on the inside of the agency. Thanks very much.
Sure thing.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.